small amount of work now required to complete that job, and I would really want to see that done in the shortest possible time. I don't know if there's anything that the officer, Mr. Austin, would want to say about that particular project, but it is something that's still on the books. It's not been abandoned, and as soon as the capacity is back up, we will be looking at commencing work on that particular job site.
All right, thank you for that. My final question is related to two roads, really. The Ashford Tenantry Road is in a horrible state. I know when I was at the ministry, this was on the list as one of the roads to be done in St. John. The other area would be Stuart Hill. That is also in a very, very bad state. So you have Stuart Hill, Lovell Road, Codrington Road, all in the Stuart Hill area. That, again, this was on the list at some point in time for work to be done. Can you give any updates as to if this is going back on the schedule in terms of repairing those particular roads identified?
I think it's fair to say, Honourable Member, that the neglect in St. John has resulted in almost every road that you have raised thus far having now to become a priority. And as I would have stated earlier, one of the things that we have had to do is to prioritize because there are so many roads to be done. What comes to mind is Pothouse, because the ministry would have started the Pothouse Road. Because of the nature of the soil, as you know, in the Scotland district, they would only have been able to complete phase 1 of the works. And what we have asked the compliant team to do is to basically do the designs and the necessary assessments to be able to get us in a position that we can actually complete phase 2 of those works. It is not work that can be done by the ministry's team. It is work that, obviously, because of the nature of the soils, is going to require a lot more geological testing and topographical surveys to be done in order to be able to have that road properly constructed. The other area that certainly came out of Paris Speaks that you would be aware of as well was Welsh Village. We visited Welsh Village. Several elderly people live along that stretch, and we recognize that we have to, again, move that up the works program because it is really one way in, essentially one way out because of the condition of the road at this point in time. So Ashford certainly is also on our radar, as well as Stuart Hill. But I think you can appreciate that in terms of trying to prioritize these, in particular, 4 roads in St. John, it is not a strict mill and pave. It is not something that the paving unit can do. And what we have undertaken to do is to place them in the programs that first they can be assessed, then the designs can take place, and then we can actually put them on the schedule to be able to execute. I can assure you that whichever is the worst of the roads, or I should put it differently, whichever may be the more simpler of the roads, then that is what we try to kind of knock off quickly. The ones that are going to require more complex, detailed designs to be done, those are the ones that will obviously fall somewhere down the program. But to your point, you were a minister in the ministry as well some time ago, and I think you also would be aware that roads have come onto these lists and fallen off of the lists. And they come on and off for different reasons, because there are new priorities, because there's a shift in the direction of policy. But what we are trying at this point to do is to really just take all of the roads for St. John and all the parishes and reprioritize based on the urgency of them, and then separate them into the various programs for execution.
Right. Thank you, Minister. I shiver to think what would happen if the depot at Bath, based on what is happening in another jurisdiction, had to identify what they did in the last week. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And I think that at this time I would pose my questions or make my comment, seeing that our constituencies are similar in a number of ways. I have had the opportunity to represent the constituency of St. Lucie after 42 years. 42 years of representation or non-representation or misrepresentation by the Democratic Labour Party's member. And the result of that has been, as we know, actually a story in itself, a story that you would not like to read. We have had, thanks to this administration, comprehensive mains replacement still going on because of the mains that were not looked at for a number of years. But I will reserve a lot of my other comment for the second reading speech. Honourable member, we have had some mains replacement throughout Crab Hill, from the junction with Archers Bay right across to Content. When I served in the ministry, I knew that once we had any kind of work done by any agency, then it would have been the responsibility of that agency to reinstate the roads. We have had extensive mains replacement, as I said, throughout Crab Hill, and I've received calls, I've received letters of residents complaining as to how the road has been left. The PSV vehicle drivers are complaining that because the road has not been reinstated, it is causing them shorts, or to have to replace shorts, replace different parts of the vehicle. I want to know, Minister, if there is an arrangement between the ministry and the Barbados Water Authority with respect to reinstatement of roads that have to be dug to lay or to replace mains. Question one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are perfectly correct in terms of the issues of reinstatement in the St. Lucie area, which has arisen primarily as a result of the water mains replacement. As you are well aware, we have pipes in St. Lucie and in a number of the rural parishes that are over 100 years old. As a consequence, while Barbados Water Authority has been replacing those mains, and we are grateful for that, it has obviously left the roads in those parishes where the work has been done in a dire state of repair. One of the things that is noticeable when you drive through certain parts of the country, not just in your constituency, but across the country, is that you will see almost 2/3 of the road having been well maintained, and then you will see in one corner of the road, you're going to see the deterioration in terms of the opening up of potholes caused as a result of the break, first of all, of the asphalt, and then sometimes the reinstatement not being done as securely as perhaps it ought to be. To your question of whether we are in discussion, we are in discussion in relation to specific projects, yes. And we also have, recently, I shared this earlier, that we have received from the Barbados Water Authority a list of areas across the country, St. Lucie included, whereby they have asked us to take on the responsibility of doing the reinstatements in these locations. I would have mentioned before too that the concern would appear as though the contractors have been trying to charge the Barbados Water Authority significantly higher than what they would often charge the Ministry of Transport and Works, or what we would, on our own accord, believe would be the cost of doing the reinstatement. And therefore, I think it's reached that point where we recognize that we will have to deploy some resources to be able to support their efforts, but also to be able to guide the Barbados Water Authority as to the rate structure, perhaps, that needs to now be engaged so that we are not at cross purposes in terms of getting the reinstatements done. And so I believe St. Lucie is definitely on that list, and we will be working with them to deploy the necessary resources between the two entities to start that reinstatement of those roads. The truth is, though, that in many cases, the nature of the disruption that has been caused on the road may require us to actually do a full mill and pave of the road. And as you can appreciate, we can patch only so much, but the truth is we may either have to take out deeper sections of the road, or we may have to place that road in a particular program where the cost obviously will be a lot higher, and we will then have to prioritize it according to the other works that have to be done. So I hope that answers your question. There is consultation, but there is certainly room for improvement in the way that both entities operate in responding to reinstatements across the country.
Thank you, Minister. I'm now going to move quickly to a situation at Jilks Road, at Higginson Road, and Foster's to Swampy Town Junction. All roads in dire need of rehabilitation. For whatever reason, over the period of time that this constituency, which I have the honor to represent, was represented by others, it was not necessary, or it did not appear important to ensure that these people in these communities benefited from government expenditure on roads. It seemed that all roads led to St. Philip. Madam, your honorable member, I know that there is a program because I have in my possession, when I served in that ministry, I have the list of roads as categorized on the CAF, on the MTW. I looked at the list this morning before I came here. And so I want to know if, I'm not going to ask you when, if that list, because the list was done on the financial years, albeit those financial years have passed, because 2021 financial year gone, we are now in 24, we are now in 25, 26, about to go into 25, 26 financial year. And the people of St. Lucie has asked me, and these districts have asked me to raise this matter on their behalf, because there is someone lurking around, seen to be I wouldn't call that term that we wouldn't use if I were on the outside, but the one refers to come lately, now raise their head as though it is, these things have now come to fruition under my stewardship. It is my responsibility, as the people of St. Lucie have asked me to execute, and to find out where on the program, if these particular roads that I mentioned, I haven't gone to the bridges yet, these particular roads that I mentioned are still on the radar of the ministry. I've heard all that you've said for the entire day that you were here and prioritizing and so on, if they're still on the radar, particularly the people in Jilks Road and Higginson Road, which I know will require reconstruction and so on.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I just want to go back a bit to say to you, first of all, that while, and I think you can appreciate this from having served in the ministry, we had a number of roads in the various road works programs in various categories that had been identified as priorities in each financial year. Even if you take the estimates book from time to time, you will see a list of roads that is projected by the Ministry of Transport and Works that will be done in that financial year. In many cases, it is not all of the roads to be done. It is really literally a summary of some of the works to be done. But we all know that there is a wider program from which a pool of roads are put in and costed once they're assessed, and a determination is then made in terms of the priorities for which roads are actually done. I say that because it is clear that your roads perhaps were included in those estimates in previous years. But I know that within certainly the last 2 years, that what we have had are a number of roads that have had to take priority over some of the roads that would have previously been in the roadworks program. And I speak specifically to the impact of climate change, because with all of the best intentions, we have found ourselves in a situation where a lot of the infrastructure has started to break down. We have had to respond to issues, for instance, at Spa Hill in St. Joseph, where we have had land slippage. And we have had to start the issues of, dealing with the issues of relocation of households as a result of that type of slippage. We had intense rainfall, which affected the area around Bucks and caused significant impact on the road infrastructure. Resources had to be diverted from, I'm sure, your roads and others to be able to address those. If you take the Lanes Bridge, we had some issues there. Again, we had to close the road, divert resources that were not planned in the first phase of the roadworks for that last year, but we had to move it into the program in order to address it. We also had areas like Melvin Hill and Mellows Hill, and I can go on, Chair, in terms of areas that were not on the radar for prioritization in a particular financial year, but have had to creep into the priority list as a result of the deterioration caused by the intensity of the rainfall. I say all that to simply say to you and to the country that there is no mischief on the part of MTW by removing a road from a list or removing its high priority from a list. In fact, what we have been grappling with is the fact that, as I said before, 70% of the roads were in a poor condition in 2018. And each year, despite us using best efforts to rehabilitate and to reconstruct roads, we are still behind in terms of the number of roads that each constituent would want to see done across the country. Now, we've had the 2 roads, Jilts Land and Higginson, assessed. You would have made the necessary representations in relation to that as well. And we have had those assessed under the current program, which is a Focus Works program. We're waiting on the outcome of those assessments so that we know where in the priority we can place it. Now, if it is that these 2 roads can be done in this Focus Works program because there are no issues of whether it's slippage or the drainage, or there's no issues in terms of mains replacement or any challenges with the utilities, we're going to go ahead and we will do those works because we have the funds in this financial year to be able to do it. If for whatever reason it is going to extend beyond this financial year, we will try to straddle the 2 financial years to be able to commence the works on it. But what I can assure you and the residents of St. Lucie is that given the priorities that have been raised with us in terms of the long-standing complaints, we are paying attention to those complaints. I think it was even last night, I don't know who has been walking about in your constituency, but I certainly know that I have been getting quite a few from the candidates of the other side as well, requests for certain roads to be done. And again, we pay each of them the necessary attention that they merit, but they have to be assessed, as the roads have to be assessed before a determination can be made. But on those 2 roads, I assure you that we have those first 2 being assessed, and we will move to expedite the works on those as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I want to move very quickly to bridges. Again, as a result of little or no work being done previously. Lambert's Road is a link road between St. Lucie and the honorable member's constituent, the honorable member for St. Peter. We share borders. Lambert's Road is on the border. There is a bridge which was extensively damaged during the last set of rainfall that we had. Pipes, mains presently exposed, and it is a road that we have tourists visiting and Barbadians leaving home, traversing to and from work, travel daily. And that, regrettably, I recall we had an incident in that very same area a few years ago. I would not want a repeat of that, because when you travel that road, after you get in the bottom of the road, you have to go extremely slow. You have to go extremely slow. If not, you will damage your vehicle. I want to thank you for the work currently happening at Pike Corner with respect to the bridge, but I still think that it is about time that is finished and the work at Lambert's done, because both of these roads are traversed. While the one in Pike Corner is utilized with public transportation, etc., Lambert's Road is a very, very important link road to St. Peter and St. Lucie. And I would want to find out what are the immediate plans for these two areas.
Thank you, Chair. As it relates to Pike Corner, what we call Phase 2, that is currently projected to be done in this next financial year. So we've allocated, in this year's estimates, there's about a 4.9 million, I believe, that is being allocated towards working on some of the bridges that, as you have said, have been ignored for quite some time. Also, the Lambert's area has also been identified for rehabilitation as well. One of the things that we've had to focus on was the assessment of our bridges, bringing up to date the 1985 Didier study that was done, I think it was back in 1985. As a consequence of not responding to some of the recommendations that were listed in that report, we have found ourselves as a country now having to deal with over 70 bridges in that report that were identified. Some of them are culverts, some are retaining structures, but they are important enough that if we do not fix them, we will end up cutting off communities and making, in some cases, the commute for residents very difficult or even longer. So what we have done in this financial year is, having assessed in this last financial year a number of those bridges, including the ones that you've mentioned, is that we have now allocated funds to be able to start the design work on those bridges. I would have mentioned Haymans in St. Peter being one of the bridges that will start in this financial year. We've actually completed the designs for that particular bridge. And we are working through the list of bridges to be able to either do the assessments or move to the tendering stage once the designs have actually been completed. But I think you can appreciate that bridges and retaining structures are complex by nature. And what may have been built by slaves many years ago, really nowadays there's new technology that has to be utilized, and before we can construct anything, we have to look at a number of factors in terms of the weight that is now being carried by some of these structures and the new technologies that are out there to be able to assist us in building out and repairing and rehabilitating a number of these structures. The assessments that have been done by the ministry has led us to the point where instead of just assessing for the sake of assessing, it has given us what was recommended back in 1985, which is the opportunity to do preventative maintenance on a number of the bridge infrastructure and retaining structures. And I believe that this now puts us in a better position to access the necessary funding going forward, whether from local funding or whether it's going to be from other financing, loan financing, to be able to put a similar project in place as we have under the Scotland District Road Rehabilitation Project, where we can actually grapple now with the number of bridges that need to actually be repaired. But I will ask Mr. Richard Austin, who is responsible for not just the depots, but who has led the team in the ministry, to just speak a little bit about the work that his team has been doing in relation to bridges to date, so as to give a deeper, more technical perspective as to what some of the results have shown up.
Thank you. Over the last year, Richard Austin, Deputy Chief Technical Officer in charge of roads and bridges at MTW. Over the last year, with the addition of 2 engineers, at least to my section, we have been able to transpose the location information from the original DDA study, which was they used a method of locating the bridges by like mile markers. So this is like distances out of Bridgetown to locate the bridges. So what we spent a few months of last year doing was to using Google GPS coordinates to get the information from the old study into a database that we could readily access, and also share that information with other agencies like the Water Authority, for example, and the other departments in MTW that may have use of that information. And out of that, we have started with to clear around the bridges between St. Thomas Parish Church and Mile and a Quarter, with a view of where need be, refurbishing the infrastructure and doing our inspections, refurbishing the infrastructure, especially the critical infrastructure of the utilities, who also share those crossings, to make sure that we are as resilient as possible going forward. So we've started that work, and we will continue our inspections and the rollout of maintenance programs for the bridges as well. So as our minister mentioned just now, there are 70 bridges thereabouts in that study, but there are a few more bridges that were not included that we're also locating as well, and have about 650 culverts on island, at least in that study. There are probably a few more as well. So that gives you an idea of the scope of the challenge that we're facing, but we've begun, and we are keen to complete that task.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to all, Minister, your team. My question relates to drainage and the challenges that are caused because of canals, watercourses, and wells that need proper maintenance and upgrading within my constituency. Ma'am, I know that you are a product of Brandon's, and there's a canal that is situated in Hoardersland, Brandon's, leading to Brandon's Beach. One of the challenges that the residents are having with this canal is that usually when the tide or the water level on the beach change, the sand from the sea most of the time block the mouth of the canal. One of the things that the residents are requesting is, if you're a good lead ministry, ma'am, can extend the mouth of the canal further into the sea to help rectify this issue? That's my first question, ma'am.
I'm going to ask Mr. Bryce, who heads the drainage unit, to address a number of the concerns you've raised, particularly because as you have raised them with me, I have in turn passed them on to the drainage unit, and I know that he's been on the ground trying to work with you to address the challenges you're facing. Mr. Bryce?
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Bryce, STO, Drainage.
Kind of used it.
With respect to the canal at Brandon's, we monitor the canal and we clear the sand barrier when the water levels become high, and we work along with the tide as well. We usually clear at night, so not to bother the bathers on the beach, right? In regard extending the canal, that is something that we have to look into, and along with coastal, and see how that can work.
Thank you. My second question relates to another canal, and this is one between Ferniehurst Pasture and Bridge Gap. The walls of this canal collapsed, well, parts of the wall collapsed sometime last year, and as we speak, the state of the canal remains the same. I had reported it to the minister. One of the residents out there who normally keep in touch with me said that to this day, no one came to really clean the canal, to remove the debris, and to start the infrastructure work in terms of repairing the canal. Are you aware of this?
Mr. Bryce, if you can.
Yeah. If this is the same canal, we visited the canal in Ferniehurst, myself and one of my officers. If you're speaking about the same canal, this canal will be put on the upcoming well contract to do the repair works.
Thank you. And there is another canal, another problematic canal situated between Second Avenue, Carter's Gap and Straker's Tenantry. This is a canal that, honestly, I don't know if you ever visited the area to actually witness the state of the canal. There's also a well situated alongside the canal that I could honestly say that needs upgrading in terms of the infrastructure, right? I could tell that the walls of the well have deteriorated over the years. I don't know if you ever visited the area, Mr. Bryce, but if you're not sure exactly where this is located, I am willing to meet with the members of drainage to give them a tour, because I know the constituency very well, and I could identify all of the problematic areas within my constituency. And this is another area that I would love drainage to also pay close attention to as well. Ma'am, my next question relates to roads. I know that you have been doing some work in the urban areas, and I just want to thank you publicly for the newly paved road that the residents in 3rd Avenue, Free Hill received recently. But to add to that, there are a few roads that really need urgent attention. These are roads that will need proper infrastructure upgrade in order to really pave these roads. If you can recall, I had mentioned previously about Barker's Gap, Dickens Road, Gills Gap, Bridge Gap, Pearl Bay, and also Hinson Gap, Free Hill. Can you tell me if you all will be paying more attention to some of these roads that some of us may call cart roads, in terms of improving the infrastructure so that the residents in these areas could have properly paved roads?
Yeah, thanks, Honourable Member. The answer to your question is yes. First of all, from the roads that you have mentioned, those roads have certainly made their way into our radar. And as I said before, the first thing is the assessment of the roads, determining which category they fall into, and then allocating them accordingly. You would have had the Freehill Road completed recently. Again, because that was one of the roads that had been identified that needed to be done. And I hope that what is being heard loudly from what you are saying is that there is no election looming, because the long list that you have would suggest that if there was an election looming, that we would be fixing all of them right now. So to assure the leader of the opposition that, to lay his fears, I just want to put that out there. Where you have short roads, and I'm not sure if your categorization of short roads is the same as meets the criteria of the ministry, but these are roads that we would consider earthen roads, roads that are roads that lead to houses where the persons would have had the challenge sometimes of having to, when it floods and stuff like that, having to use 2 pairs of shoes to get out of their accommodation. And we have a program in the ministry, and certainly going forward in this financial year, which will see an acceleration of works for those types of unpaved roads across the country, whereby the ministry's officers through the depots will be working on being able to improve those roads. And we will also work alongside with local contractors who have the similar equipment to MTW to be able to award the contracts for them to be able to support the efforts of the ministry. And I want to make the point that this is a direction, there's no mystery, this is a direction that the ministry is going, where instead of us coming here year after year complaining that equipment has broken down or that somebody didn't get a road done, where we have the resources, what we are working on is being able to allow MTW to stick to the core, to do the core well, but to make sure that we provide the oversight and the direction for other players who have the skill set to do it, to be able to help us to do some of the same cart roads in constituencies across the country. But that is the model we've used in highway beautification. It is the model we're using in road building. It is the model that I hope that we can employ across the entire ministry, where we maintain core, but we augment the services and the delivery of services from the ministry with entrepreneurs and other contractors who are able to support and to maintain the standards that MTW needs to set for itself.
Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you so much, Chair. And let me extend my thanks to the Ministry of Transport and Works. I know you have a huge and at times thankless job, and you have to hear all 30 of us calling and asking about various things that deeply affect our constituents. So let me thank you for Prior Park, and I'm happy to hear that I will get some mill and pave on some of my roads, and I'm looking forward to that hugely. Now, St. James South is a constituency that is very middle class and very entrepreneurial. And the issue of transport is a significant matter for them. Of the 11,000 constituents, I have 4,000 who are over the age of 60. A number of them were accustomed driving, but no, they don't drive anymore. But they need to get transport to be able to do their shopping, and they're older now. And therefore, carrying heavy bags for long distances is a challenge. So the good people of West Terrace Gardens have asked about bus transport coming in a more consistent fashion down through NCF along the main corridor of West Terrace, because many of those residents are now older and are not able to drive. So we would like to know about transport within St. James South. It's not, West Terrace is not the only place that has the challenge, but in particular, they have been suffering as they have grown older.
Okay, thank you, Minister, and I thank you for the praises. But I know that you have also indicated a long list of roads that still
Very
remain outstanding, so we are working through them. I'm going to ask both Ms. Holder and Ruth Holder, Director of Transport Authority, and also Transport Board, to perhaps just address you on any of the challenges. I think you heard me say earlier, we are expecting 30 buses coming by May. An additional 31 are also to be purchased by this administration as well before the end of the year. And it is our intention to continue to increase the fleet of buses for public transportation by the government, while at the same time working with TAP operators and other public service vehicles to augment that system as well. So specific to your concerns in the constituency, I'll ask both of them to just speak to that.
Good afternoon again. Minister, you mentioned the area of Wanstead, and I know that in, excuse me? Oh, sorry, Ruth Holder, Director of Transport Authority. Minister, Chairman to Minister, I know that you spoke of Wanstead in terms of the concerns you have with residents, but I know you have quite a few PSVs that actually come through Wanstead. Is there a specific time frame that you are having an issue with? Because if that is the case, it is one that we certainly can take a look at and see how best we can address.
Okay, part of their issue is they prefer Transport Board because they're a little nervous with ZRs. So, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. Their nervous system can no longer take that exhilarating ride.
Excitement.
Fabian Wharton, CEO, Transport Board. Good afternoon again, and thanks for your question. The Wanstead route is the route you're referring to, as the director was saying, for the Transport Board as well. We normally send, from my memory, one in the afternoon and one late at night for the late night services. What has happened over the years is that route was, especially based on demographics you described, as well as the amount of private operators operating along that corridor, or when we did have services there, they were like, no one traveling on them. So I do appreciate the change in the age of the persons in the community and how that will impact then their need to get public transport. So I've taken very close note of what you said in terms of the change in demographics in your area, and therefore that is something that we're going to have to take a look at, for sure. Thank you.
I would want to recommend perhaps we could do a survey of some kind where we gather the information so that if you send a bus 2, maybe 3 times a day, not every hour on the hour, but at specific times that they know for sure on these days at this time, they can plan their banking, their doctor, their pharmacy, and so on. Around that would really be very helpful to them. It's the consistency and knowing when to expect that I think is important to them. Now, they're also very entrepreneurial, and very frequently I get questions and requests in particular for things like ZM permits, ZRs, taxi, hired cars, and so on. And I know that for some time we had a situation in Barbados where there was over-issuance of these licenses that started to make certain routes unprofitable and so on. But I know that there was to be some effort to try to address some of that congestion. So what I want to know is, where are we in terms of redressing the situation so that new players can come into the transport sector? Because there are a number of them who are keen on it and would like to get involved. I'm a little concerned about the process, however, because I've seen a number of people bring in the vehicle and don't have the permit, and then can't get the permit, and then they're in trouble. So I would like to understand how that works and how can I better advise them when they want to get into that sector.
Thank you, Minister. Just to say, first of all, that that situation that obtained under the previous administration will never obtain again, where permits are issued at will, particularly prior to an election. We have taken, since we have come to office, the position that there must be equity. The principle upon which the issuance of permits is done is one where we believe that it is a method of enfranchising people. And so we're not here to make the process more difficult for the ordinary person to be able to have access to being able to have a separate business to be able to run, or for somebody who wants to have that as their sole business. I want to make that point from the outset. There are rules which govern the way in which the Transport Authority operates in terms of the issuance of permits, and the board and the director obviously have oversight over that function. I will have the director obviously speak more in detail to the specifics of what is coming before them and how it is actually dealt with. Suffice to say that I would often say to people, don't put the cart before the horse. Because if you are going to obtain the vehicle and then seek the license and then complain after that the Transport Authority has not facilitated you, then I certainly cannot condone that behavior. So I think the first thing is for persons to apply, be clear as to the process, go through the application process, and then I'm sure the Transport Authority can work with you, because like I said, we're not trying to deter people. So if you have an intention to do something, let the Transport Authority know, and obviously based on the number of permits that are available at the time, they can perhaps work with you to be able to help with the proper allocation of the permits that are to be distributed. But I will ask Ms. Holder to just speak to the issues that you have raised in more detail and to elaborate on the process really at the Transport Authority for permits.
As Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, there is the application process. Just to make a step back before I get to the application process. For permits in the categories of taxis, maxi taxis, tour buses, ZRs, and minibuses, the capacity on those permits are determined by Cabinet. Cabinet determines the number of permits that we can allocate in those particular categories. For hired vehicles, that is not an issue because there's an unlimited capacity in terms of that. The same thing goes for charity permits as well. So the process in terms of all the way down to the actual granting of a permit, you make the application on the Transport Authority's website. You indicate the type of permit that you're applying for. We get on average about 320 applications per month for permits in various categories, so therefore we have to process all of those. We have an online system, but yet still we still have to process it and ensure that information being submitted is cross-referenced and is cross-referenced correctly. So therefore we have to cross-reference KIPO website, Electoral and Boundaries website as well to make sure that the information that we're getting is the correct information. We have a staff, we have an admin staff of 9 persons. I have 1 clerical officer who more or less processes all those applications. So you can imagine what it is. Once all the application information, all the details are there, then we schedule interviews. Each applicant in those categories I mentioned before, which is a taxi, et cetera, all those applicants must be interviewed. The only way we know who to grant a permit to is if we go through some sort of process of determining whether or not they fit the criteria and shortlisting. That is done by the board. The board meets twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 2 until 4:30 to try to see how many applications we can go through during that period. Once the application is approved by the board, by that committee, then we actually have to go to the board for ratification. So that is the process that we go through, but it is a task right now where I think I'm almost sure that in terms of taxis, I think I have like 530 something applicants, and for ZM I have another 400 and some odd applicants. The BTs, recently we got an increase in terms of the number, because up to August last year, we did not have any BT permits available at all. We got cabinet approval, so now we do have an increase in terms of those BT permits, so now we can start interviewing for those again. But to be honest with you, The task in itself is one that is extremely time-consuming and challenging for us in terms of the staffing capacity that we have and the process that we have. But as I said, we only know who to grant a permit to if we interview people. my colleague just reminded me also that we usually have some Saturday sessions, some marathon Saturday sessions for interviews, where we interview one Saturday every month, where we interview for the entire day in order to bring down the backlog of it. But it's a task. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I could well appreciate that as a challenge. We probably have to look at what we need to do to suggest some other areas in which people can participate in the economic activity of the country. My last question on transport pertains not just to St. James South, but probably has implications for the country. And I know some time ago we started talking about assessing the flows of how people use public transport and to move away from a system where people have to go to town and then go back out in order to get to different parts of the country. And that there was some discussion around different hub and spoke areas to allow somebody to go from, say, Oistins and get to Speightstown without having to go through Bridgetown or go from Oistins to St. John. How far along are we on that? And when can we hope to feel the full impact of that for the benefit of the citizens?
I think, Honourable Member, with the introduction of the Barbados Mass Transit Authority, certainly as we envisage it, not certainly as it has been confirmed thus far, but as we envisage it, a lot of these concerns regarding the routing and the hubs and stuff like that would be able to be further expounded, I think. But those discussions are ongoing. I think the focus right now is being able to finalize the details relating to what the Barbados Mass Transit Authority would look like, and then to commence our discussions with the unions, as I said earlier. So that is already on the cards. What we did in the interim, though, is that we engaged the services of a transport planner, in a sense, to help with those conversations regarding traffic flow. What do we need in order to be able to capture data that would help to inform decision making? What technologies do we need to employ in order to improve public transportation? So things as simple as being able to know when a vehicle is coming. You know, these are all apps that clearly in the rest of the internet, the world globally, are things that the traveling public is accustomed to. And so we wanted to have someone or a few people who would be able to guide and to advise as to what a newly imagined transportation system would really look like. I can ask perhaps the CEO of Transport Board, maybe, or Ms. Linda Holder, if she is on the bench, to perhaps speak a little bit more to it in terms of the details of what lies ahead. But I think that, in essence, is a summary of the direction that we're going.
Thank you, DPM. And again, thanks for the question. I think in this same forum is where I raised the plans of the board to implement hub and spoke, as we call it, particularly along Highway 1, where we have several services that would go along Highway 1 all the way to Speightstown and then break off into St. Lucie, Boscobel, Pike Corner, Josie Hill, Checker Hall, etc. If you get what I'm saying. And what we were saying then was that we would bring what you call a line service into Speightstown. That will bring everyone who's going to that direction on that bus, and then they will take what we call the sport buses to the various areas. That is one. You would have recognized within the last year or so, too, we would have made some adjustments to our ABC connection, our ABC proper, in terms of connecting Barbados away from having to go to town. We made some connections based on some discussions we had with representatives from St. Philip in relations to connecting the Crane over into 6 Roads, because that was almost basically impossible. You would have to basically come down to Curtin's gas station and either walk or you gotta come down to, so it was Dr. Brown who had raised it with us as well. We created the Gore Hill connection as a consequence, because we also recognize that the catchment area, a large portion of St. Philip, the polyclinic over there in Gore Hill also has them as a capture area. So we did some creative things with it, but the truth of the matter is we can't do the hub and spoke at the moment with the resources that we have. So we do envisage correct as the DPM was saying, even maybe before we get into BMT, if it's not ready at that time, we will still be able to make those changes based on the expected increases in fleet that we are going to get within the next year or so. So in relation to technology, the board is currently in the process in advanced stage testing and live testing. So we're actually using live data for the automated fare collection system. We have begun the onboarding of our seniors. We are currently in the process of boarding 2 schools. Onboarding 2 schools. I think it is Lodge and what is the next one? Springer Memorial. That we currently have persons at enrolling students. So students from these 2 schools are getting their cards. The reason why I mentioned this system is because within that system, we have also using the board's website and all of the bus stops. We have all the bus stops plotted in on all of the routes. And what that will do, we're going to layer on top of that from a technology standpoint we're going to put the interface on top of it to allow it to be more user-friendly for the average person to just look at it. So we do have the underground, basically the foundation on the technology. So we just need to put the finishing touches on it in order to make it more user-friendly. Because what we are using it for now is for our own internal purposes. But what that does, ideally, is it allow you to know where people board, where people are boarding, how many, what time. So we'll be able to pull those reports in to also help us with the route rationalization and how we move forward in the future. I don't know if the COO of the Transport Board wants to add anything. Mrs. Oda, she's here as well. Okay, all right, thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. Blessed good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would wish to bring to the table tremendous challenges that we have in the parish of St. Thomas and not just the constituency. And like the Honourable Member for St. James South, St. Philip South, I think it is, and St. George South, we have constituents, close to 12,000 persons, while some others have 7,800 and so. And therefore, you will understand the population that we have to service. I have tremendous difficulties over the years, but it has become worse within recent times. I'm a person who will write to indicate my challenges. Sometimes you don't even get a response to what you write about. But our constituents in St. Thomas deserve the same care and attention as any other. And I want to thank the Honourable Minister and her team for some efforts that I've seen recently, because she knows that I am a noisemaker, even though I will love her and everybody else in the same way I did before I started to make the noise. I have tremendous difficulties, sir, with the Scotland district, of which St. Thomas is a part. We talk about the heart of Barbados, that is in the center of the island, and it is extremely difficult to travel or traverse through the parish at all angles, even extending over to St. James Central, that has a section of St. Thomas in it as the address of persons, but the services are not there. I had reason to visit the Bagatelle Depot about a month and a half ago, and I almost had a heart attack. There is no equipment there to service the parish. And when I asked the supervisor, everything along the line of equipment is in St. Andrew. I have no problem, because the problems in St. Andrew are more serious with the land slippage and all that than they are in St. Thomas. But I would wish, though, in between, to be able to get some road patching done. There are too many roads with serious potholes. Persons are being injured. Their vehicles are being damaged. And a lot of things are happening. And even I burst 2 tires, and I was told, send a picture of the potholes and the damaged tires. And I can't get my compensation. If I can't get my compensation, then you could understand what would have been happening in roads leading from Bridgefield and those that were damaged. I want to know, and I know the Honourable Minister has indicated the plans for the area. I want to know how soon can we get it, because it's fortuitous that I called the Bagatelle Depot this morning to find out what are some of the areas that are to be patched, because I know of them just as well as those workers, and even better. And unfortunately, I was told all the equipment is in St. Andrew, and I said, I'm happy to know that St. Andrew is getting help. But when you destroy the heart of Barbados, you call it a tourism environment. People are coming, there's poor signage, I mean, just about everything has gone wrong. I would like to know, sir, exactly what are the plans for St. Thomas in a more comprehensive way through the distinguished members who are here, and I want to thank them for coming and enlightening us, because I will have messages that I can give back to the residents, because they get cursed every day that I don't do nothing no more.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for your question. I'm just going to respond to the first part of your question as it relates to pothole patching and some of the challenges that we've been facing, certainly in the Scotland district, where, as you are well aware, almost my entire constituency is located. I think I said it earlier that we've been having in NTW some challenges with equipment, and what we were doing recently was that we were trying new approaches to dealing with some of the pothole issues that we're seeing right across the Scotland district, in St. Joseph, in St. Thomas, in St. Lucie, and even in parts of St. Peter. And what the officer down there has been doing, I think is perhaps a novel way of approaching the issue, is that we've been pooling resources. Something we've talked about for many years in NTW, where we pool resources, we bring in resources and manpower and equipment from various depots, and we assign those resources to a particular district per day. So each district may have 2 days or 3 days. Whereas all of, maybe not all, but the men who would normally do the patching because for whatever reason the truck is not working or another piece of equipment is not working and those persons will otherwise have to be deployed, those persons will be pooled and taken into one district. So maybe St. Joseph today, St. Thomas tomorrow, St. Lucie on Wednesday or Thursday, but that's how it's done sometimes. So on one occasion, while visiting the depot, you may hear or you may realize that all of the equipment may be in one district, but that district is working because that's district's day. But rest assured that your district will also get a day. Also, we're personnel from St. Lucie, from St. Joseph, from St. Andrew, and from Prospect and parts of St. James will also be deployed into your district to assist with the patching. And we've seen it right across the board where we have, we can't just, in the past, we would have used maybe a flatbed truck, a few men on the truck shovels, and they did the patching in the district. But we realize now that that would not suffice, and we've been bringing in greater loads of hot mix. We've been using a bobcat, we've been using a roller, so in many cases you have a full team, a bobcat, a roller, everybody working together to ensure that we can patch as many holes as possible in districts to address the problem. Also, you will see, and I want to make this point, because we speak about the dichotomy of road patching in the ministry where we have a mixture of the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things, or the better way of doing things, where we know that we still have persons who patch the traditional way that NTW have been patching holes for many years. We know it still exists. But more and more, you're seeing it on our major highways. Highway 5 is a good example. You're seeing it on Highway 1B in St. Lucie as well. You're seeing it on Highway 2A in St. James and parts of St. Michael. But you're seeing evidence of a new approach by NTW to patching potholes. You've asked for it where the holes are squared, they're cleaned out, they're prepared, and they're patched. Using a method as opposed to just throwing in the material and rolling it, or having cars roll it, or having the shovel to compact it. You're not seeing that as much as you've seen it in the past, because we are moving away from that approach to a more standardized, modern approach that really addresses the issues that we're having with our roads, because the problems that we're having with roads in Barbados now I call it a conspiracy of things that are happening. You're seeing the Minister of reference climate change where you have heavier rainfall, intense rainfall, maybe in short bursts, but it's intense. But you're also having a situation where you're seeing increased vehicular loading on our roads where you have much heavier trucks, much heavier buses, much heavier cars, and much heavier vehicles on the whole on our roads. And some of the roads, especially the ones in the rural parts of Barbados, are not designed for that type of vehicular load and not designed for that volume of traffic. And they're deteriorating at a rapid rate. And then this is compounded by the fact that many of our roads in the Scotland district and rural parts of Barbados those roads are built on mud. They're not like in the urban parts where we have bedrock just about 2 feet down or so. You go down to parts of Scotland district, you could dig for 20, 30, 40, 50 feet and you'll see no rock. You'll be lucky if you find some hard dirt, but you're not gonna find any rock. So those roads, and we refer to that as the sub-base of the road, which is the subgrade, sorry, which is the existing material. And if that is not strong, no matter what we put on there, it's not gonna bear the weight of the vehicular load that we are seeing these days. And these roads were built in many cases 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and they weren't built, as I said, they weren't designed for that. 40, 50 years ago, we had a few donkey carts, maybe 1 or 2 lorries in those rural spaces, but now we're seeing the big electric buses, which I'm sure the CEO can tell you weigh maybe as much as 13 tons, and probably more when they're fully laden, and big sand trucks and so on and so forth. So potholes now they're coming in 1 and 2 little potholes. We're seeing large amounts of potholes, especially with the rain falling, the way it's falling. So we have to take a more a collective approach. We have to go at it collaboratively, and it involves 2, 3, maybe 4 depots in some cases working together. So I may come one day and find all the equipment in St. Thomas. And that's because on that day, we are working in St. Thomas to make sure that your roads in St. Thomas and all the roads in surrounding areas are fixed.
Yeah,
just giving that inside information so you have a sense of what may possibly be the case.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Parasec. I'll let Minister MP come back in shortly. But I think you have the benefit, member for St. Andrew, of having the similar terrain as the honourable member who's raised the question. And because of his experience in the ministry with the terrain, it has also helped to inform new approaches within the ministry as to how we address these problems. I would have stated earlier that we've spent a lot of time doing preparatory work on the more difficult roads, which allows us now to be able to drill down and to deal with the reorganization of our depots. And I think that's what really the honourable member is getting at, that we accept in the ministry without fear of any contradiction that we have some challenges at our depots. But what we are not prepared to do is to do nothing. I think it was the Honourable Attorney General who said in his opening of the debate on the Attorney General's office that the MTW was at one point an employer of last resort. And certainly I would like to be responsible for turning that on its head and allowing MTW to be a place where people pay attention to the delivery of service and services, and to ensure that the quality and the output of what we do satisfies the general public. So it can no longer be that we just have a slapdash approach to laying down asphalt on the ground to fill potholes. It can no longer be that we get reports of what the depots have done a month after they have done it without being able to clearly understand and appreciate where is the forward planning that has to be done in all of these districts. What I'm trying to say to you, honourable member, and to this chamber is that it is not business as usual at MTW. And if one thing that will come out of these estimates is that we can now spend a bit more time reorganizing the depots so that they are a lot more responsive to the concerns that are being raised by the public. The other thing is that your concern about vehicles and equipment not being available. Now, 2 things happen. One is either that the vehicles and the equipment is actually not available, or the second thing is that people don't want to work sometimes and will tell you that the equipment is not working, okay? That's straight talk. What we have determined is that we got to change the structure of the Ministry of Transport and Works and throw the onus where it needs to be. because we've not been able to hold people to account over the years, both administrations, in the way that we would want to hold them to account. And what we have determined back in 2023 when we had a MOU with the UCAL was that we wanted to move to a leaseback arrangement where we would hand over, by way of a lease, the equipment under MTW. We have about $16 million in equipment under our portfolio. We want to be able to put them in a position where they can repair and return those pieces of equipment to us in a timely manner, so that the days of being able to say to this country and to constituents that the equipment break down and we don't know when it's going to be fixed can come to an end. Not that there will never be a situation where that arises, but simply that people will not be able to use the tired excuses that the equipment is not working and there's no way to verify whether it is or it isn't. We also have the issue of equipment being in the workshops for long periods of time or being with external contractors for long periods of time. Because again, the oversight that is necessary to make sure that we stay on top of these pieces of equipment is simply not there. So it is that type of reorganization that is going to bring relief, Honourable Member, I believe, to your constituency. We are at the point now with UCAL where the negotiations have taken place over the last few months. We've involved all of the various stakeholders to be able to review the rates, to look at what is fair and reasonable for both sides, to look at the reorganization that UCAL will have to make, to look at what MTW will have to do in terms of its operations that currently exists in terms of the repairs to equipment. And we have sent that paper with recommendations to the Ministry of Finance. That is where it is at right now. Hopefully, before the end of these estimates, I am anticipating that we will get a response and we will know how we are proceeding going forward for 2025-26. But the concerns are noted in relation to the organization of the depots, and I hope that that answers your question in relation to the way forward. You also raised the issue about the claim for compensation. And just to say to you, Honourable Member, I saw your name on a list of persons who had claims for, I'm not sure if you're dropping a pothole or what, but I suspect that you have made a claim through the system that is provided by the ministry to claim compensation through the normal channels. What I can say to you is that, and I share this with the general public in terms of the steps that are required. Obviously, you have to make the claim, state where the incident happened, where the pothole was. If you can take a picture, a location pin, and send it to the ministry, then the response from the legal counsel usually is to verify that information and then go through the normal channels to be able to make the payment in terms of compensation once it can be verified. Now, there's no question that we have potholes on several roads. So I think more the concern now is the speed maybe at which the ministry is able to respond to the claims for compensation. But there is a process. We've not run from the process exists. How we have tried to deal with it is to get the roads done. If we get the roads done, it reduces the claims that come in for compensation from the general public. And that is why you are seeing the acceleration of works on the ground, because it makes no sense paying these large sums of monies out to people and having Barbadians frustrated as a result of their vehicles being damaged on the road. The last thing you raised was the issue of signage, and I just want to touch on that quickly, because signage is not just a problem for St. Thomas. We embarked on a national signage and street infrastructure project sometime last year, where we had engaged a number of what we call community auditors across the various constituencies to be able to assess signage and the requirements of signage across the country. And this was both directional signs as well as the places of interest signs. And the audit also took into account what was required to be done in relation to our fingertip signs as well. That audit came back, and we were then in a position to put together a tender document for persons to be able to apply to the ministry with a view to being engaged as contractors to start the process of replacing a lot of the signage, broken infrastructure across the entire country. I'm pleased to say that that tendering process has been completed. The awards have been made to 3 contractors, 3 signage contractors, and those works will start in the next financial year. I believe we've allocated about 2.7 million under sub-program 516, public transportation, sub-program 525, which relates to the improvements to traffic management. But we felt that this was necessary because, again, at every Parish Speaks, we would constantly hear the refrain from the public that the signage was broken, and particularly in the rural parishes. And if you really take a drive around the country, you will see signs in all kinds of different directions, or you will see no signage whatsoever. And so this project in this upcoming financial year will begin to address the challenges that we've been facing across the country. The first stage is intended to hit the major highways and then to work through into the communities, while at the same time allowing the ministry's signage department to also deal with the fingertip signs as well across the various communities. And the hope is also that we can extend that to the renaming of a number of the, say, the housing units, the various certain places of interest to ensure that we are properly signposted. So those are the plans for 2025. Honourable Member, I think I have answered all 3 of your questions. Thank you.
Is that all 3 of mine, sir? Or can I continue with my second one, please?
Go ahead quickly, Honourable Member.
Yes, please. I had others, but the more important ones I wanted to touch to get some kind of understanding, so when I have to speak to the residents and others, I can be as clear as possible. The bridges in the parish as well, ma'am, are really in a sad state. And you're talking, well, Bloomsbury has been for a while, because when he had written to the then minister in 2009, he wrote back and told me we had 14 years to fix it. He did not understand what the Scotland district looked like. However, Bloomsbury is still in a terrible state, and the Allen school children and so in the buses. It is just the one side of the road one could drive for all those years. Tapping St. Halfpenny Gully, the Pond Hill, plus Tapping St. Halfpenny now is one halfway of the road, and the heavy duty traffic is coming through from Welch Mahal by the post office through Lane Castle, and it is really very dangerous. I think that it really deserves the officials, the architects and so to have a look as soon as possible, because it may have to be closed before there's any injury. We have Vaucluse with some bridges there that are bad, Shop Hill as well, Carrington's Village, which is the village where I live, and that bridge is on a, only thing is holding it up is a pear tree that belonged on the property that my mother owned. And of course, Endeavour, that collapsed before, and the ministry at that time went to look to see how they can link, because if there's an accident in Lion Castle, those folks cannot get out to go down through the new road that would have been built to get over to Vaucluse. So there are some challenges in case those bridges collapse, going all the way over to Erie Court. It really is a bad state, and I'm not blaming the government or anybody. I'm just saying, over the years, plantation owners just made sure that they covered every gutter, every drain, and everything to accommodate the mechanization in the late 1970s, 1980s. And as a result, all of that water is now on the road. So we're not blaming the Ministry of Public Works and so, but it is just that over time, the water has been ripping up everything. And it is sad that when the persons come to do the potholes, they just take the back of the shovel and hit it and move on. And that too will open up, and it is money all the time. So I want to thank you all for listening and to be able to let the public understand. I cannot build a road, but I can make a case for them for the short time I'm here. But I wish for us to be able to work together more synergistically to be able to address some of the issues that are being raised, because it is an extremely difficult situation to be able to live in the area and see it and hear it, and people knock on your door, but you can't give any answers in the way you would like. I want to thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I can just respond to, just for clarity as well, a number of the bridges mentioned by the Honourable Member are, some of them are retaining structures, some are actual bridges. I think the Bajan parlance is that we refer to everything as a bridge, but that's not the case from the technical team. The interesting thing about it is that while we have provisioned the 4.9 to be able to repair a number of the bridges and to start that process of actually doing the reconstruction of many of them, we also have provision in these estimates for another 17 bridges that we would have started the assessments on a few months ago. And we are at the stage now where in this financial year, the intention is to through professional services to engage experts who would be able to do the assessments for us, to be able to, again, determine the level of priority that needs to be given to each of them. I think, put simply, the challenge has been that we have not been proactively assessing and being able to come back to honourable members or to the country to be able to say, this bridge is high priority, this bridge is low priority, this is medium priority, or that these are the things that we can do in the interim to be able to rehabilitate. So I think for this financial year coming, we will be able to put ourselves in a position, even if we are not able to get everything done, to at least have the assessments which tell the story of the amount of money that it is going to take in terms of civil works to be able to start the reconstruction of a number of these bridges.
Chair, is my time up then, sir? I only wanted to make a final comment, if you will allow me.
Thank you. I was just checking to see.
Okay, because I only
make
did
sure
two
that
thus far,
you've,
and this one is short.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Your Honour. And while the Honourable Member for St. Thomas goes silent, her words still resonate with me, and I quote the Honourable Member for St. Thomas in her opening said, "Just about everything has gone wrong." And I wrote it when the Honourable Member unleashed on the government. Just about everything has gone wrong. And I want to transpose those words to St. Lucie, because what is happening in St. Lucie is not fair to the people of St. Lucie. May I proceed, sir?
If you may proceed, I rather think not. After 42 years, you're going to tell me about St. Lucie? Honourable Member, that is an affront, though. Or you
are allowed me to. Well, your microphone has been muted. I don't know if the Honourable Member for St. Thomas has something to do with that, but. Your Honor would be aware that in my capacity, I believe I have some political authority to speak in respect of the whole island. And I repeat how reassured I felt when, it may be her swan song, but the Honourable Member for St. Thomas said, just about everything has gone wrong. She's not going to deny that, nor you, sir. And in that regard, I would like to say to the Honourable Minister that some weeks ago, we wrote a letter to the Barbados Water Authority in respect of the distribution of contaminated water to the people of St. Lucie. Now, when the Honourable Minister spoke earlier this morning, she was heard to say to the Parliament that she has no expertise on these technical matters, and she reminded all of us, the Honourable Member reminded all of us that she's a lawyer. And I don't know if the Honourable Member saw that letter that went to the Barbados Water Authority, but in that letter, we were asserting a fundamental breach of the contract between Barbados Water Authority and the subscribers to the Barbados Water Authority who are receiving contaminated water. I'm not hearing your microphone, sir.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, we are discussing transport and works, not water.
Yes.
In case you missed the allocation, it is not in this ministry. Water is not in this ministry.
Yes, but I'm dealing with works. So you're denying me the opportunity to raise the matter of contaminated water in breach of contract. And
Honorable Member, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I will not sit here and allow you to make those remarks. Have you done a study? This is not a water debate. This is not a ministry where water does not reside in this ministry.
you may be aware, Your Honor, that that ministry that you claim, that Your Honor claims by way of technicality, is not due to come to these estimates. So I am asking on a matter of works, the works that are going on in St. Lucie.
But you have not mentioned any works that is going on in St. Lucie. I've spoken about the works in St. Lucie already.
I don't know why you're afraid.
Get to the point under the Ministry of Transport and Works.
Well, my concern...
Are you talking about mains replacement? Are you talking about mains replacement? Because you haven't replaced any since 2015. 2 years.
I trust Your Honor is not precluding or preventing me from exercising my right to ask questions.
No, I'm not preventing you from exercising your right, but I'm allowing you that you have to abide by the standing orders.
I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing the Honourable Member of St. Thomas,
I'm hearing you.
Yes.
I'm listening to you.
And I'm saying to you, sir, I am appealing to you in your good office that if you plead the technicality that the question of contaminated water is technically not under this ministry, I'm saying to you that this is a matter of works. This ministry is called the Ministry of Transport and Works, and water, until very recently, if we want to plead technicalities, was under the ministry. So let us continue the technicality. I'm
not dealing with technicality, I'm dealing with
facts. Oh, you're not? Well, let me say to you, Honourable Chair, that there was a time when the matter of water fell under the Ministry of Transport and Works. And my question is related to that period when water was under the Ministry of Transport and Works. So please allow my question then.
Honourable Member,
on a point of order,
please allow.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman. Your Honourable Member knows that the most basic rule of the debate is that it has to be relevant. Whatever might have been in that ministry, it could have been energy, it could have been the hospital. It is irrelevant to this discussion. He should either ask his question or move on.
Your Honor, I don't know if the intervention or it's a point of order. Well, Your Honor, let me respond. I am asserting here today.
Honourable Member, I respond to the point of order.
Oh, you are responding to the point of order?
Yeah. Point of order, accepted.
Right. And what is your ruling, sir?
I said point of order, accepted.
So am I permitted to go on to ask about...
You go on.
But I haven't finished, sir.
You can go on with the relevant question, but not out of order.
Your Honor, I am saying to you that I am asking a question relating to a period when water and the Barbados Water Authority was
Honourable Member.
But I haven't finished,
Standing order number 41. The Speaker or the Chairman in committee of the whole House, after having called the attention of the House of the committee to the conduct of a member who persists in irrelevance or tedious repetition, either of his own arguments or of arguments used by other members in debate, may direct him to discontinue his speech and resume his seat.
Well, I haven't left my seat.
I give you one more opportunity to raise a relevant question.
So you have rules
under the Ministry of Transport and Works.
Just for clarity then, your ruling is that I cannot ask about contaminated water in St. Lucie. Is that your ruling, sir?
You cannot ask about irrelevant.
No, I'm being
anything.
particular
You
here.
cannot ask, honorable member, you cannot ask about anything irrelevant in this debate, whether it's contaminated water in St. Lucie, according to you, or some in Christchurch South, or the lady under the bridge in Christchurch South.
I'm obliged to you, sir. So the record now reflects that the issue of contaminated water in St. Lucie is not to be raised
And the record
under this
also
head.
reflects that the honorable leader of the opposition is asking irrelevant questions
Thank you, sir.
and wants to disobey what the rules of this house says. Thank you.
May I proceed, sir?
You may proceed based on what we just said.
Yes. All right. Let us then ask the minister if the roadworks in St. Lucie have contributed to the contamination of water in the parish of St. Lucie.
Honorable member, this is not a debate on water.
It is on roadworks, sir. And I am asking if there is, I know the honorable member this morning said that the honorable member herself is not technical. And then the honorable member went on to state that she is a lawyer. We have been on the question of roadworks for the whole day. And transport. I am now asking a question as to roadworks. I just heard a long exposition from the junior minister that some roads are built on several feet of dirt. I wonder how the ministers of housing and agriculture feel about that. But that's another issue. Let us be relevant. Am I then permitted? Beg your pardon, sir.
Repeat your question.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't know why there's so much disquiet in here. I don't know why, sir. I am very calm and gentle. Why is there this disquiet? Can't simple questions be asked in here?
Leader of the opposition, ask your question.
Thank you very much, sir. On the issue of road works, Minister, my question is, has the ministry discovered any evidence that the road works have been contributing to the contaminated water in Barbados?
Thank you, Chair. Honourable member.
Motion again, sir. They're trying to decide who to answer, who is the answer.
Honourable.
I've asked the question, sir.
Honourable member.
Well, then allow the minister to answer.
Exactly.
But I was asked if that is
Allow
something.
the minister to answer and desist from interrupting.
For your sake, sir, would you like me to repeat the question?
No.
About 10 people say no. This is a dictatorship.
Honourable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is clear to me that just about everything has gone wrong with the Democratic Labour Party leadership.
No, that's not an answer. That's not an answer.
And the simple answer to your question is no.
There was just a ruling on relevance. Please let the ruling on relevance apply to this non-answer. I am asking a question that I'm entitled to ask. No, it has not been given. With all due respect, sir.
The answer has been given.
I heard an answer about the leadership of the Democratic Labour Party. What does that have to do with the Ministry of Transport and Works? I have exercised my right to ask a question as to roadworks in this country. And whether roadworks are responsible for the contamination of water in this country. I am entitled to ask that because the people in St. Lucie are receiving brown water and they're being forced to pay for it. And that is a fundamental breach of contract. That is law, and it is good law. And the people of St. Lucie are entitled to an answer.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the honourable member answered. She said no. She said no.
I did not hear
The
no. I heard
the
something about the
record
leadership of the
House will
Democratic Labour
reflect that
Party.
She said no.
Well, I will follow up.
Because you may
I will
have,
ask a follow-up question.
You may have discord with the Democratic Labour Party.
No,
but
no,
we are
that is not
discussing
relevant
that
in
in
here.
This house. We are discussing things pertaining to the estimates of Barbados.
And my question pertains to the estimates.
And she answered.
And I have a follow-up then, sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you. If the works, now I've received an answer that the road works are not contributing to the contamination of water in this country. Honorable member, if it is not the road works, is this government in possession of any information as to what is causing that contamination, if not the road works? How many people am I questioning, sir? I am hearing about 6 voices.
Mr. Chairman, if I can be allowed to respond,
it will not answer
if
questions.
the honourable member
I have sat here for the whole
can allow me to
Honourable
respond.
Leader of the Opposition, we are not going to go through this again.
Go through what again, sir?
I have
right to ask questions?
I have said to you,
But why is my
quoting
question
from
so
the
troubling?
standing orders of this House, I have ruled on it. Please allow the honourable member to answer.
I thank you so much, sir. So you're ordering the member to answer. Thank you.
Go ahead, honourable. It is not a relevant question.
I beg your pardon, sir? But you've asked the member to answer. If the member is unable to answer, I will go on to the next question. The record will reflect.
Mr. Chairman,
that
I
member
think
says she is unable to answer, and I will move
the
on.
country is well aware that we have been replacing water mains that are over 100 years old. I'm not sure to what the honourable member is referring to when he speaks of contamination. I think that's the first thing. Brown water is also caused as a result of the rust, sometimes from the same pipes that we are replacing, that his administration did not replace, did not care about the people sufficiently to be able to put a water mains replacement program in place. So to engage in a theater in this place whereby he is seeking to insinuate that we are in any way contaminating water is incorrect.
The honourable member to answer.
Whenever y'all can answer questions, it's about theater. Tell the people that enjoying the brown water that they're in theater as well.
We are not insensitive to anybody experiencing brown water, but your questions must be relevant to the debate.
Wash white clothes with
Honourable Leader of the
bathe with
Opposition.
Are you talking about theater?
Read the rules of the House. You must allow the chairman to be heard in silence. Read the rules in this place.
Theater what? You're to answer the questions. What theater what? Answer the questions.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, ask your final question.
Simply have difficulty with a question and it becomes theater. The people in Barbados that are suffering are doing it in theatrical posture. You don't want to answer questions, say you don't want to answer it. May I proceed, sir?
I have said that long time ago.
Thank you very much. Now, honourable member, you have stated in answer, and you said we have been replacing water mains that were not replaced before. Please, honourable member of St. Thomas, just let me ask the question. Just let me ask the question. You talk about theater and you interrupt me every time I ask a question. This commotion of interruption. May I proceed, sir? Thank you very much. Honourable member, you've told the chamber and you've told the country the cause of the contamination, that it is contained in mains that were not replaced. I am saying that that water that is resulting from unreplaced or old mains is not usable by many persons. And therefore, it becomes our position that if that water pumped to those persons is not available for use, then that has resulted in a fundamental breach of the contract between the consumer and the Barbados Water Authority. And I know you are not functioning as a lawyer and that you're functioning as a minister, but an official letter was sent to the government asking this government that claims to be very caring and compassionate to exercise forgiveness in relation to a contract that has been fundamentally breached. If you care to answer, will the government be disposed to forgiveness of bills in relation to water that is brown and or contaminated?
Mr. Chairman, the honourable member is taking advantage of his parliamentary privilege. He is irrelevant in his questions and he knows it. If he wishes to have a forum to discuss water issues, there are many opportunities for him to do so. But we are in the estimates debate. There are young people above me watching this debate and have been here the entire day. This is not the way that we conduct parliament. And the honourable member would do well to take the example from others who have come before him.
Your Honor, my response,
Honourable
I
Leader,
am entitled to
Honourable Leader
on a
of
matter
the
of
opposition.
public
Honourable
crisis.
Leader of the Opposition, this is not relevant to this debate. I have ruled on it, and you will not circumvent my ruling.
No, Your Honor, and my response is, I have asked 2 questions previously. I have got 2 answers, and my present question relates to the content of the answers that I received. And the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast, gave an answer that the water, the contaminated water, derives from mains that were not repaired.
Honourable member, Mr. Chairman, this member is misleading this place and seeking to mislead the public. And I dare say, you have the power of the chair, but so long as I have a microphone in front of me, I am going to interrupt him each time. I have not said that the water in any part of this country is contaminated. I simply sought clarity from him what he was talking about, because it is clear to me that he does not appreciate and understand the magnitude of the mains replacement program that this administration has to undertake. And I'm seeking to enlighten him, and he would do well to listen.
Honourable member, you do not have to respond to an irrelevant question. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I will proceed to the next member. Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me commend the Minister and her team for the excellent work that they're doing going forward, and as well as the work they would have done going forward based on what I see in the estimates. My question was in relation to Head 516. I was looking predominantly at the matter pertaining to traffic lights and street lights and so on. And when I came to office, Mr. Chair, one of the things that concerned me most was that my constituency, but other parts of Barbados as well, was particularly dark. And I've written quite a few letters in relation to lights in St. Michael South. And I'm only using St. Michael South as the example, but I suspect persons all over Barbados would be interested in knowing how they are able to get lighting on relatively dark streets. For me, this would be Chelsea Road. This is also Dayton as well. So what is the procedure? Because I have heard that we do every other light, but there's some streets that have lights on every pole. Then there's some streets that have lights on one pole, miss 2 poles. So is there a rhythm? And if so, what is that rhythm? What is the determining factor? And it's not only lights, I suspect the same happens with mirrors at the corners of streets. How do people get those mirrors? They're little nuisances in constituencies and communities that people would probably like information on how to remedy. So lights, humps, mirrors, and the number of times that I would have written MTW, unlike the member for St. Thomas, I get a response though. I get acknowledged. I get acknowledged, but oftentimes, you know, the work doesn't follow the acknowledgement. So through your chair, I'm just wondering what is the procedure, particularly for lights, because I fear that men do not appreciate how women feel in darkness and the fears that are associated with it. And I'm just wondering if we could have a procedure on lights and also, I mean, in relation to that, mirrors and humps and these things that constituents continuously ask for. That would be one.
Thank you, Honourable Member. A very relevant question, and I'm happy that you relate it to the gender issues, because a lot of people do not relate well to the fact that women in particular are impacted by poor street lighting across the country. You will note from the estimates that we would have allocated, well, there is a $2.5 million provision in the estimates, which is down from the usual $6 million that we would have received previously. And we would have highlighted through the Permanent Secretary to the Ministry of Finance that that is clearly an error, because we do need to continue to improve street lighting across the country. And I'm hoping that there will be a move-in of resources to us before the end of these estimates are concluded. We receive requests from members of parliament, from the depots, from you know, the ministry's website. Persons respond to that website and indicate that they would like infrastructure being placed in various locations across the country. That information, certainly if it comes directly to me, I share that information with the relevant departments within the ministry. I will send it to the Chief Technical Officer, copy it to the Permanent Secretary, and they will send it on to the other departments for those issues to be addressed. We have a utilities coordinator who compiles all of the requests, and that individual will then meet with the Barbados Light and Power and work through with them the requests that have been made and to determine which of those streetlights they have been able to do and which ones have obviously not been done in a particular month. So we get those reports as to what has and has not been done. Obviously, I believe that why some members may complain or constituents may complain that they haven't gotten the lighting done is perhaps more of a capacity issue on the part of the relevant agency, because we do keep up to date with the list, but we find that the attention that perhaps needs to be paid to knocking off those requests is not certainly where we would want it to be. The issue of mirrors as well, a similar process obtains. You can write to the Chief Technical Officer outlining the location, an assessment will be done, and then a determination made in the financial year as to where those mirrors are allocated. In relation to, I think you mentioned speed humps as well. Yeah, now this is a difficult one because oftentimes, every time that we do a road, we are asked for street humps, especially if it's not a major highway. The public has a way of asking us for these to be installed. And I think you could understand the challenge if we had to install speed humps at every single road that we have constructed. And so the ministry, the technical team would determine based on a number of factors, obviously with their children in a particular area, and from a safety perspective, whether or not they are in a position to do the humps. But this is one of the issues that we're hoping to address in this financial year in relation to the depots, because technically the depots are responsible for this area. But in many cases, I would have to say that we've not been as effective in the output of responses for these types of works, which require artisans, they require skilled persons to be able to do it. What we are proposing in this financial year, again, is that where the ministry staff can undertake core services like the installation of mirrors, the installation of speed humps, that we continue to do those things. But where we can map out the locations where these things can be done and where the specifications can be provided for them to be done in accordance with the standards of the ministry, that we're in a position to outsource to independent contractors, to have those individuals being able to meet those standards to get the work done. Because it makes no sense us taking all these requests for speed humps or the installation of mirrors, and we're not in a position to get back to persons or to meet the requirements. In many cases, we have the mirrors, but the manpower is where we often fall down. So the approach going forward is to basically identify our core, what are the things that the team within the ministry can do on each of the areas that are of concern to the public, and where we can provide the scope to the contractors, we invite persons to be able to carry out those works going forward. And so that is the model that we are using in relation to those three issues. I would also want to take the opportunity to mention that independent of the street lights that we would source through Barbados Light and Power, there is also a donation from the People's Republic of China of 430 solar lights and lamps, which it is our intention to be able to utilize along Highway 2A. We've had a number of complaints over the last few parish weeks. Every time we go into the parish of St. James for persons complaining about the lighting, the poor lighting in that area. And in discussions with the Chinese ambassador, that was the former ambassador, and the team from China, we were able initially to secure 180, and that was only solar lamps. And then we indicated to them that I think the best way to be able to execute this project was to provide us with the actual poles, so that we didn't have to put the investment into being able to have to now purchase it. I'm pleased to say that the first 180 have already arrived on island. The remaining ones are also in the port, and we are in the process of getting those out with a view to being able to undertake a pilot, which ironically is actually going to be in the Oistins area. So if the Honourable Member for Christchurch South had a problem before about us spending money in Oistins, he will have a bigger problem after today's session, because it is my intention and this ministry's intention to be able to light the area in and around the bus stop facility, exactly for the purpose that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South mentioned, which is that we have a lot of females who traverse that corridor in particular. And we really want to use that location. And I think most of you know this location is close to the ocean. It is an adjunct to the actual area that we spent money to renovate recently. And I think it's a natural area that people, after leaving the Oistins area, would traverse to be able to catch a bus or get a van to be able to go to various areas. So we've determined that we will use that area as the pilot to test the strength of the lights, to make sure that they are adequate for the purpose for which we have intended, which is for Highway 2A. But it will also give us an opportunity, if they work well, to be able to raise with the Minister of Finance an opportunity to either be able to have additional lights that can be installed on poles within communities, whether with the assistance of Light and Power or whether we have to purchase the poles ourselves. But this is a project that in this financial year, you will see not only the improvements to the Oistins area, but you will also see improvements in terms of Highway 2A as a result of the investment and certainly the donation that is being made to us from the People's Republic of China.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. And yes, I did notice the decline from 6 million to 2.5 million. I thought it must have been an error because it goes back up in the following estimates. The numbers, thanks for the explanation. So my second question tied to the first in relation to lights and, in a way, accessibility. I have responsibility for persons with disabilities, And as persons are concerned about access to some of the the bus terminals, and being able to get into them, get out of them, seating when they're actually in the bus terminal has been a concern for persons with disabilities. Just the roughness, sometimes being able to get around through the bus terminals when they're the ones that are outdoors, it has been a major concern. And of course, I have an interest in making sure that is rectified. But so that's 1A. But also in relation to the poles, the lights, the ones that speak and communicate, so that people know they can cross the street at an appropriate time. I think all of our lights need to get to that point. And then the signs where the pedestrian crossings are, many of them are faded and need to be repainted so that people can see them. And in other developed countries, oftentimes they have lights so persons know that there's a crosswalk ahead and so on. So that persons with disabilities, older persons, or just the general public can have some comfort, one, when they're in the bus terminal. Because I was told that, for example, the one in town, the one we recently renamed after Granville Williams, that persons with disabilities sometimes had to go all around to be able to access that particular one. That's a major one. So I just want to know what the plans are specifically in relation to those things, and general signage on the roads, like the crosswalks, the poles that may speak to persons with disabilities and so on. Thanks, Chair.
I can assure you, Honourable Member, that the Ministry of Transport and Works is committed to the tremendous work that you have been doing in the ministry, and certainly the Commission as well on disabilities. Prior to this year, we would have worked with the ministry to be able to provide parking spaces, for instance. So we've started the engagement, and we would have done, I think, 4 parking spaces in the Bridgetown area. We also would have installed and procured the pedestrian signals and the stop lights for persons who were hearing impaired. Those, I think, were placed at the junction of Chelston Park in Pine Road and also Culloden Road and near the National Disabilities Unit on Cullimer. We would have at the ministry also put in a ramp for persons doing business at the Barbados Revenue Authority, as well as within the plastic card section. So I can say to you that we are sensitive to the issues that you have raised as it relates to the terminals. I'm not sure if you've had the specific discussion with the Transport Board directly, but I would urge that if you have not done so as yet, that those discussions take place urgently so that we can work that into our upgrades and improvements for the various terminals in this financial year. So I think that the commitment is certainly there. I'm also told that the intention is to introduce what we call crosswalk beacons as well, which again would further facilitate persons with disabilities. And we would be guided in a lot of cases by the data from the National Disabilities Unit and your ministry in terms of prioritizing the areas and perhaps even the demand in certain areas over others where we should direct the resources available to this ministry as well.
Yes. Just a follow-up, Chair. Thank you, Minister. It's just that these conversations are not new, so I wouldn't want the impression to be given that the transport personnel they're unaware. So I was just wondering what the specific plans are, because it has been raised. Okay, and I'm just wondering if perhaps you're the person responsible for those bus terminals could tell us when we could look forward to some relief for persons with disabilities.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Fabian Wharton perhaps to address the issue of the terminals.
Thank you, DPM. The issue as it relates to persons having accessibility in our terminals, and you're quite right, is one that was raised before. Quite recently, the management team of the Transport Board, being aware, we actually know who the persons are that use the buses, and you are correct that it is easier for them to board by coming through the entrance around where you described. What we are currently looking at is how to redesign Gate 1 and 2 and to allow that area to be more accessible. That is what we are currently discussing and getting plans to see how we can get that effected. What has happened is that the persons we are aware of, and the two is from St. Philip, that use the bus on a regular basis, for sure. So we want to stop him from having to come around and then sometimes find himself passing by the traffic or where we need that assistance. So to be honest with you, because of his travels, has given rise to us quite recently looking at it and asking ourselves how we can do that. And so far what we are at is that gates 1 and 2 seems to be the easiest part because you have the ramp there when you come in. It's a concrete slab when you're coming in, so then you can just make that quick turn instead of the persons having to traverse right down through the terminal. So that is the stopgap phase. But then more holistically, we're gonna have to get people in from your side with the expertise or wherever we get our expertise from to look at the total terminal then in terms of how we treat to that accessibility.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, to you and your entire team for recent works that we would have seen in St. Michael South as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We are going until 5:45 this evening, and I'm going to ask, therefore, I'm going to try to quickly allow at least another 2 honorable members to ask your question, provided that you are brief. Christchurch, West Central, honorable member.
Thank you, Chair. As brief as possible. I want to locate my conversation directly to head to support grant 0523, recognizing, of course, that the other aspects of what I wanted to discuss were thoroughly discussed by my colleagues. And I want to thank you for assuring and giving those persons of Silver Hill, Maxwell, Gull Hill, Vauxhall, the rest of the Caram assurance that the road works that were promised. I went on a tour with your officers, and I am sure that a promise made will be a promise kept. At 0523, there is a vaccine issue. I've heard my constituents at clinic talk about the whole issue of licensing. And this is for persons going out to get their license. In ministries across Barbados, there are some issues that cause persons to give along stoops. And forgive the vernacular, Mr. Chair, along stoops. And one of these issues in this ministry is the whole license and driving instruction and the testing and those types of things. I want to ask, because it seems to be an onerous exercise sometimes to get, first of all, a date to do your driving test. And secondly, even after you are given a date, you have often heard persons complain about the length of time they have to sit down in the car sometimes to wait to get a testing officer to come and do side tests. I want to ask if, of course, knowing that this is an issue, what is this ministry's response? Because I have seen also in this sub-program that additional monies were put there, not only on personal emoluments, but for professional services. So I would want to assume that this money was put so that we can have more contracted testing officers. And I don't know what else are the plans, but this is obviously a vexing issue for a lot of people in Barbados. And I would like you to give us the fix on this issue.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, the estimates reflect that it is our intention to engage the services of about 3 more testing officers. We have had a number of challenges in terms of persons off sick or the positions not being filled. And in many cases, we've had to bring back persons who have retired to be able to augment the existing staff that are presently there until we are able to have those positions filled for which those requests have been made. It is our intention to continue to contract the services of individuals to be able to help to ease the stress and the strain on not just the officers, but also the public at the Barbados Licensing Authority. We've also been moving in the direction of trying to modernize the Barbados Licensing Authority, whereby technology would drive a number of the services available to the general public. Across government, we've been trying to stop people from having to come to offices, but rather to engage in doing a number of the services online. Almost every person, young person, old person, has access in one way or the other to a device or a computer whereby they can access services and pay for services online. And we've been trying to encourage more and more persons to be able to move in that direction. There's a system that is being developed, which is an online system, which will be known as the Driver's License Management System, where persons will be able to register and to pay for their regulation tests. To be able to get a driver's license, they can pay online to purchase those services. They can also apply for appointments for the driver's license. It would also facilitate them getting the card and the appointment to get the card. And there would also be a reminder system that will be onboarded to allow for persons to renew their driver's license card so that you get a prompt after when you are ready to renew the driver's license that time is about to expire and that you can go online and pay for these services. We expect that there will still be the opportunity for some people, especially elderly persons who are not as familiar sometimes with the technology, to be able to still utilize the walk-ins, but we try our best to discourage that as much as possible. And we are looking to have that rolled out by the end of March. It is currently with the ministry, MIST, in terms of looking at doing the penetration tests, which would allow, once that is done, for us to be able to launch it by the end of March. So I hope, Honourable Minister, that answers the question in terms of what is to come. It has taken a little while for the technology advancements in licensing authority to be rolled out, but we do believe that this would certainly go a long way in being able to ease some of the stress that the persons experience. We've also in the process, in these estimates as well, of upgrading the facilities at the Pine location to allow for persons using what will be the customer care section of the Barbados Licensing Authority to flow easily into the offices of the Barbados Revenue Authority also. We've opened up the space. We've already done the first phase of the renovations. I believe that we are simply now waiting on the Barbados Revenue Authority to give the green light for us to be able to retrofit 2 of their kiosks, because I am mindful that persons with disabilities should not have to walk on the outside of the building after engaging in services with the Barbados Licensing Authority to be able to go to the Barbados Revenue Authority to pay for services. And we have found a way, with the help of the architects, to be able to redesign the space to have a seamless flow through for the general public. So I think that is really the sticking point right now, but all of the other renovations have been done at the facility, and it is our hope that as soon as BRA is in a position to confirm that we can go ahead and start those renovations, that we will make that almost smoothless transition at the location in the coming months.
Thank you. And finally, earlier you would have spoken about the technologies that are being invited into our whole road program as we battle the vagaries of climate change. I, for one, who sits in the armful loss of that discussion in the Ministry of Environment, I have an appreciation as it relates to how devastating climate change could be on anything, including roads. I know you would have spoken about the roller compacted concrete roads as one of the solutions being exploited. But I know, and I know that it is not the best kept secret in your ministry, that is also the intention and the idea of having the polymer modified bitumen road as a solution as it relates to increased durability, flexibility. The reality is that it has viscoelastic floor properties that normally the other roads don't have, and to be able to stop all those cracks and to keep the viability of the road for longer periods of time, I think that this is a good notion in terms of how we should be advancing road technology, repairs of potholes, etc. What is your ministry's intention to use this type of technology, and what are we doing so far in your ministry? Because I know that we would have started some experiment with that type of the polymers.
Thank you, member, for your question. The polymer, we refer to it in ministry as solid earth, is a technology that we would have discovered 2 years ago when we traveled to Arizona for one of our road conferences, IRF conferences. And what we saw was a product that could be applied to the soil, and when allowed to harden, would make that soil hard like rock. And we felt that we can use that here, we could apply that product here in the Barbadian context. And we brought down a team from Arizona who trained up some of our NTW staff in how to prepare the polymer. It requires a mixing, a certain ratio of water to polymer to get that perfect mix. One of the challenges we would have discovered in the initial stages of using this is its soil types. The soil that is found here in Barbados versus the soil that is found perhaps in places like Arizona where there's a more desert-like environment, and that soil is very coarse and was well suited for the product. But we, over the year, past year or so, we have tweaked that approach. We have looked at different aggregates that we have here on island that would work with the polymer, and we have sent, our labs actually sent materials, different types of soils, different types of stone. So we even sent some milling stuff to see how well that polymer will work, because the intention of that was to use in the short road program. It came up because when we first came up with that program, we were looking at roads, not necessarily how it evolved, where some roads 300 meters, 200 meters, 500 meters were built, but those little short roads, maybe as long as this room, that lead from the main road to person's houses, but were in holes or were in mud, and persons would then have to take off their shoes, put on a pair of slippers or a pair of boots to get in and out. Those little short roads, we were looking at see how we can harden those, seeing how we can harden those roads. So we were looking for a solution that was quick, that was easy, that was cheap, well cost effective to approach those types of short, very short roads, or not driveways as such, because we know it, especially in the rural spaces. I see it sometimes in the urban space where people live in the back. We call it living in the back. You know, we have 2 or 3 houses up front, but there's a track that leads behind there, and persons have to walk behind there to get home. And oftentimes, that is just barely a cat road, if anything. So we were looking at those types of short roads. And we believe that we, after engaging with the company Solid Earth over the year, and having sent our materials over there to be assessed, and that we have come up now with a new approach, and we ordered some material. The material is on island. I spoke to the CTO just last week about it. It's on island. We are identifying a number of roads that we're going to start our rollout with. In terms of the, where we would go. Obviously, it's still in its pilot stage. It's still new technology to Barbados. I will let the CTO speak to it in more detail when I'm finished here, but just suffice to say that we are looking to roll that out this year as well, and see where we can apply that along with the other technology, which is the roller compacted concrete that you mentioned, and see how efficient that particular approach is. In the ministry, we all about evolving. Oftentimes, the public sector. We don't evolve as quickly, certainly, as you see in the private sector, where they see the introduction of slurry seal, for example, as one approach to treat the surface or improving the surface of roads without having to go through the full process of rehabilitating the road. You know, you look at ways of fixing roads without having to spend the large amount of money that is usually spent in Villanova Road. And so Seal, RCC, and now this polymer are just some of the solutions that we are coming up with in the ministry through a collaboration between us and the private sector, of course, in some cases. In this particular case, it was merely our technical staff who traveled and discovered this product that we are now bringing all these things to bear on the ministry to see how quickly we can have roads and access to persons' homes in both rural and urban Barbados as quickly and as cost effectively as possible. And to build also roads that are resilient, because that is going to be extremely important going forward with the various impacts in terms of climate and vehicular traffic that we're going to have in our roads. So I'm just going to let Ms. Canterbury, our CEO, give some more detail about the use of the polymer and what are the plans for the ministry going forward, now that we have the product here on island.
Good afternoon, Dave Scantlebury, Chief Technical Officer acting at MTW. Being cognizant of the time, I'll be quick. The Parliamentary Secretary mentioned the solid earth polymer, but definitely the member from Christchurch, well, West Central, mentioned polymer modified asphalts, and that actually is another discrete product. We recently, approximately 2 weeks ago, had a presentation from a supplier who mentioned polymer modified asphalts, which you simply take the asphalt and using polymers, we basically modify the properties of it to give it various characteristics that we want. Mainly stability, because what we find is that the heat of Barbados, especially since it's getting hotter, is actually creating a more, I should say, less viscous material, and therefore you're shoving a lot more. The weights of the vehicles are causing shoving at roundabouts, especially as well as areas where vehicles stop. And therefore, what we would like to trial is a product which would stand up a little better to the heavier loads that we're getting now, as well as the heat that we are experiencing.
Thank you. And most important for me is that it is a more environmentally friendly solution. That's it. Thanks.
Honourable Member for St. James, West St. Michael, West Central.
Thank you, Honourable Member, Chairman. I understand what it feels like to be sitting in the chair when you're Minister of Transport Works and Water Resources, but in this case, Minister of Transport Works, having had the honor to do so. Honourable Member, I would like to ask you, we have a particular challenge in my constituency, and when I speak, obviously I speak on behalf of the constituents of St. Michael West Central. And there's a particular road, the Fairfield Road to Clevedale. I'm wondering if you can give us an update on that particular road, because it is a cause for concern in constituency. And I think I will be very brief in this first question by asking if you can provide us with an update.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We had that particular road included under the roller compacted concrete program, but we have since, after discussions with the utilities and the technical team, determined that it would actually be better placed in asphalt. And so it has been moved into a different head of in terms of road works, it's been moved into a different priority under the asphalt roads that are to be done in the next financial year.
And obviously, as a follow-up to that, I will obviously, from time to time, request roads. So I will leave those roads that I've requested to the ministry to, obviously, when resources are available, to help us out in the constituency. Another critical area in the constituency has to do with the Denton Road on the Grisette side of the constituency. There's a bridge at Denton Road, and when you have an opportunity, I shall be grateful to tour the area with you, Honourable Member, and your technical team. Of course, even though you would reassure residents regarding the road and that things will happen, I believe that the bridge is in urgent need of attention because we have a lot of traffic, including commercial vehicles such as the Transport Board and the ZR route taxis who ply that route. And I would therefore, I know that there's provision within the estimates for reconstruction and further works to do with bridges, and therefore I would ask you to look into that with your technical team, and I will make myself available if you so desire to have a tour with you so you can have an opportunity to look at it firsthand as we go through. So that's the road, and unless you can provide us with an update, no, Madam.
It doesn't, it's not a road, Honourable Member, that stands out in my mind. I think most of the others do. And it means that it perhaps is not actively on the agenda at this point in time, but I will certainly ask the team to assess the road and let us meet with you to be able to see exactly what we can and can't do. If it can have some maybe patching or whatever done, then fine. If it is for full reconstruction, well, I think you know better than anybody what is likely to happen. But I think the first thing is to meet and to assess it.
Yeah. And thank you very much for that. Because I know there's been a lot to talk about, obviously, climate change and the rainfall and so on. And even though we can put measures in place to mitigate drainage, which I also believe stems from a lot of the upstream. And I know that the drainage unit has been working assiduously on several projects across Barbados, dealing with the ponding of water upstream, which could protect our roads and our bridges. I would also like to move on to the issue of streetlights. I would have submitted a number of requests to the ministry regarding streetlights, the installation of streetlights. I heard you, Honourable Member, speaking to the issue of the solar lights. I too would like to ask if there is for a pilot project in place to obviously have St. Michael West Central including the pilot project, because as we well know that especially when crimes are being committed, we can use street lighting as a prevention, one of the prevention methods in order to highlight areas. And in a time when people obviously have some concerns about safety and security, I think the whole question of street lighting, but I would have submitted a number of requests to the ministry, so I shall be grateful if at all possible you can provide a response to us now or at a later date regarding the installation of street lights in St. Michael West Central.
I think the concern raised, Honourable Member, is one that almost every member in this chamber will probably be equally able to raise in terms of street lighting. I have my own concerns in St. Michael Southeast, and so I appreciate the issue of safety as it relates to poor lighting. What I will say, though, is that if we are able to secure additional solar lights, I think one of the first priorities that we would look at would be a conversation with the Honourable Attorney General and the Commissioner of Police to be able to look at those areas which are, in a sense, red flags, whether those are the city areas, whether those are high traffic areas where people are traversing in and out of communities. I think it would be done first and foremost with the guidance from the police, particularly because they have raised with us certain trouble areas that are cause for concern, where people may be robbed from time to time, or women have been sexually harassed in certain areas. So I would certainly pay attention if you have specific areas in the community that you would wish us to place the lights, but I would certainly be guided first and foremost from a potential risk of crime being the first priority, and then perhaps looking at the other areas thereafter. Of course, I cannot anticipate with the quantum of the lights that we will get, but once we get the numbers that would allow us to be able to service all constituencies, we will definitely deploy accordingly.
And thank you for that. I certainly support the whole issue of the street lights, solar lights, and so on, because when I look at your sub-program 524, and I saw what was budgeted, I'd ask myself a question, but having heard from you that obviously the government plans to pursue a program of solar-powered lights, it would explain the reduction that we would have had in this year's estimates, forthcoming year's estimates, that is, compared to the current year. And I want to salute and recognize that initiative, and I will continue to make the case for St. Michael West Central insofar as additional lights when we get them. I've had the pleasure of traveling elsewhere, and I see the value of the solar lights and what they do to communities, and I am very pleased that Barbados will be going in that direction insofar as the solar lights. But on the last point, I just want to, on the issue of drainage as well, like I said, I know the job is very difficult for the officers within the drainage unit, having worked there, like I said, with the team before. But I think that we should pay particular interest to the ponding of water upstream. It has worked in St. Peter, St. Lucie as well, and I think that if we can, obviously the pond, as we all know, is an area where you excavate, you allow the water to settle, it will go flow into the aquifer, obviously help to replenish the aquifer that would allow us to have more water within Barbados. But I think that issue of ponding water should be dealt with, because when you, for example, if you start from in the constituency of St. Michael North, which is a adjoining constituency, and the water flowing coming down through to West Central, it finds every water course, every canal, and it causes no shortage of challenges relating to the blockage in canals and water, sometimes even compromising property. So I think that's an opportunity, if obviously within the resources of the ministry, if we could look at ponding the water upstream in an attempt to reduce or mitigate, I should say, mitigate a lot of the flooding that comes through and the associated challenges with blockages within communities, thus contributing to flooding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that you do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker. I beg for leave to sit again.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker. Beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Honourable members against, say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again.
They want another bill.
Mr. Speaker, revert to first reading of bills.
I member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Seaport Industry Management, Development and Operations Bill 2025.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read here first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. I member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the chamber until tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.
Question is that this honorable chairman be suspended until tomorrow at 11 a.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until the 25th day of February 2025 at 11 a.m.